Welcome to Lesson 1 of the Flyvee PPL course. Before we jump in, I just want to go through what this course is. This course, along with the use of your home simulator, is designed to bring you up to speed for the real-world PPL course. Now, you could be a new student or, like me until recently, someone just getting back into light flying after a long time away from it, or a flight sim pilot looking to bring a bit of edge to your flight sim experience. Whatever your reason for being here, by the end of the course we will have covered almost all of the entire PPL flying course syllabus. The hope is that by preparing for the flying lessons at home, you can ace your PPL training and therefore possibly require less lessons and hopefully save some money obtaining your license. The course is mostly presented in video format, and to get the most out of it, I recommend watching the video through and then loading your own simulator and going through the exercise yourself, possibly with my videos running alongside again and pausing as required. Like in this first lesson, there'll be some PDFs now and again to assist you with the course, and after every lesson there'll be a short quiz. Now these are just a few questions just to reaffirm the knowledge from the topics we've just learned. They're nothing to do with the ground-based PPL exams. This course doesn't cover that. Finally, I use and recommend MSFS, but you can use any sim if you prefer. So let's get stuck in with lesson 1. This first lesson is called Aircraft Familiarization, and we will describe the aircraft inside and out, look at the controls of an airplane, and finally we'll end with how to use a checklist and complete this lesson by starting the engine. This video covers the outside of the airplane. So the aircraft we see in front of us is the Cessna 152. It's a fantastic training airplane, and I believe MSFS models this quite well, i.e. it's like the real thing. It also happens to be the first aircraft I first took solo, so it has some personal value to me. Now let's take a virtual walk around the airplane and we can see what it's made up of. You might notice as we go along some similarities to boating in aviation, as well as some French words. In fact, we'll start off with that French word right now, the aircraft fuselage. This is the aircraft body. Through this we have the nose of the aircraft, the cockpit, the wings, the landing gear, and tail section or empennage. There's that French again. Starting with the nose of the airplane, we can see the cone shape at the front, which is the spinner. Connected to the spinner we have the propeller. You can think of the propeller like a wing, and through its shape it's going to provide us with forward momentum and propel us through the air. The light here you see is the landing light. Now you might first of all think this is a light so you can see in the dark when you're taxiing or landing or taking off. But in fact we use this in daylight as well to make us more visible when we're at the critical stages of takeoff or landing. Down below we can see the oil cooler and exhaust for the engine. Up on top of the engine we have the engine cowling. Now if we were to unscrew all these screws here, we could expose the engine to the elements. We don't do that normally as pilots, we leave that for the engineers, but there is a small flap here for us to check. When we open up this flap, we can check the engine oil quantity, and if required we can fill up the engine oil as well. As pilots, it's our responsibility to make sure that the engine has enough oil for the flight. Moving back to the cockpit now, we can see where we sit in front of the controls. Behind us is a small baggage area as well. This cockpit is a closed cockpit, i.e. it's not exposed to the elements. Remember, flying is quite an ancient art, so in the past, more commonly was the open cockpit, such as this beautiful Boeing Stearman. Moving up to the wings now, we can see the wing strut. This is a structural support for the wings. The very start of the wing, where it connects to the fuselage, is called the wing root, and we can work our way along all the way to the wing tip. Looking at the wing from side on, we can see the smooth leading edge of the wing, and then we can see the sharper trailing edge of the wing. It's the shape of the wing that is fundamental to providing lift for the aircraft as we move through the air. The right wing, and this is coming onto the boating terminology now, is called the starboard wing. And we can see a green light on the starboard wing if we turn it. If I move over to the left wing, or the port wing, we can see a red light. The reason we have these lights is so that aircraft can get relative bearings to each other at night time. Underneath the port wing, we can see a tube that's sticking forward. This tube measures our speed through the air, and it's an essential instrument for flying. Making sure it's not blocked or damaged is a really critical part of the walk around of the airplane. Moving up on top of the wings, we can see 2 fuel caps for each wing. We store the fuel in the wings of the aircraft. Also in this airplane we can see some antennae for the aircraft. Now there's quite a lot of antennae even on a small airplane such as this one. It's not just for speaking to air traffic control, but it's also used for navigation, radio navigation, which is something we'll cover right at the end of this course. Moving on to the tail section of the aircraft now, we can see the fin and the tailplane. This is also referred to as the vertical and horizontal stabilizer. Up on top of our fin, we can see some more antennae and a beacon light. The beacon light is a flashing red light that lets others around us know that the aircraft is either starting the engine or is going to move. It's a safety thing. Down below, where we have the aircraft meeting the ground, we have the landing gear. At the front, we have our nose wheel. All the steering is done through the nose wheel. It doesn't have any brakes. It also has suspension provided through this oleo. We want to make sure there's some distance here, so there's going to be suspension through it. Finally, we check the tire to make sure there's no damage there, or of course it's not flat. The main wheels is where most of the weight of the aircraft lies. We can see some brakes here, and we want to make sure there's no leaking from the brake lines or anything like that, again the conditions of the tire. But there's no steering here through the main wheels. This wheel arrangement has a name, it's called the tricycle. The supporting wheel is at the nose of the aircraft. The opposite being true for a tailwheel aircraft where the supporting wheel is at the rear. Normally the supporting wheel provides the steering of the aircraft. Well, that now completes the first video for this lesson. You can go into your own flight simulator now and do your own walk around and just go through naming some of the parts of the aircraft and getting familiar with it. After that, I recommend doing the quiz or doing it the other way around, it doesn't really matter, before we jump inside the airplane and get familiar with the cockpit of the aircraft.